Okay, so I decided to do just a separate video on scientific illustration and scientific sculptures because it's pretty much my job, or was my job, at the Natural History Museum. So I'm going to go through a few, I'm going to go switch back and forth, so it'll kind of, hopefully it's not too disruptive. Okay, so this is my portfolio, and this is what I used to take on when I was going to do a side project, you know, because I've had my sculptures at the Leo Cabrillo Aquarium, the Los Angeles Zoo, Ripley's Believe It or Not. I have a lot of stuff out there. Scientific papers that are published in magazines and scientific papers. Anyway, so this is the front page of my portfolio. So this is pretty much tells you everything about me because it has some stuff in there. It has, yeah. So you can see what I am and who I am just by that first page. This is really a detailed crosshatch saber-toothed cat. So it took some time. Now this is the alternative reality of scientific illustration. That's done on a computer, which took 10-15 minutes to scan this one into this. Went in there, changed the color, pushed another button, put a drop shadow, and off we go. Now this is, it's going to be hard to show that, but this was, the museum was getting some skulls, so it was my job to put skin around it, or give the illusion of kind of what it might look like. Now, when I look at it, because that was 25 years ago, when I look at it now, it's all kind of things I could change. Here's another one. This is a friend of mine that worked at the museum. His name was Mike Quarles, so we got those Neanderthal skulls there. So it was my job to wrap his face around these things. It worked out pretty well. I could still do a few more things. Now this is kind of how my work takes all kind of different directions. Now this was, I was kind of asked to do a card. To invite people over to the party at the La Brea Tar Pits. Now, okay, so still makes sense, you know, mammoths, you know, drinking martinis. But for me, the best part of this whole thing is not the hairy back, which used to be one of my things, is her eyes. They're just real simplistic, but they're gazing upon this mammoth like, oh God, give me a break. So there's a little kind of humor in there. Here's another one, you know, muscle structure, watercolor. My studio, and one of my things. Here's some magazine things with my dinosaur in there. There's some other things. I'm going to switch over here. Okay, so this was another one of those assignments that, move it up here, that it was like, okay, Steve, we got an assignment for you. We need a holiday card. You can't use Hanukkah, Christmas. You have to represent the museum in hopefully a non-political way. And this one took some brain thought because I kind of threw so many sketches and ideas and concepts, and then all of a sudden it just, and that's the way things work. Within 2 seconds of all that days of research and sketches and concepts, it hit me like a ton of brick. The museum has these fighting dinosaurs out in the front and 2 skeletal structures in the middle. And I thought, okay, so instead of them fighting, I'm going to have them going outside and trying to catch snowflakes. So it represented the museum. the snowflakes represented winter, and it worked. And yeah, that was one of those success things. Now this was going to be an idea for a giant sculpture, partial kind of history of ancestors versus modern day. I'm going to just switch over to another thing here. Okay, so this is a cherry. This is actually a scientific sculpture. And if you look real close, you can see if this was in your hand, you wouldn't be able to tell it's not a cherry unless you feel the weight. It's really kind of really delicate. And I used to pass this around to my students, and I often said, this is a model, this is a sculpture, this is a piece of artwork. And dealing with young people, of course, one student wanted to be funny, so he stuck it in his mouth and crunched down on it. So all he did was just destroy a sculpture. But that is kind of what you deal with when you're a teacher and you bring the museum to the students. Now this is a sculpture, a model. The original owner is Joe Koch, and we were working on the whale show, and we wanted to show how the Inuits hunt. And this is a fascinating thing. You can see the holes right there, and there's a hole in the back. Now, a precious item is wood, because out in the tundra, it's like, or the frozen north, there isn't very many trees. So this is a crazy, unique, genius idea. The wood part goes in here, and the straps of walrus or whale or any straps of leather are on here. So when they're in their kayaks, they throw this with a spear, but as soon as it hits the animal, the wood pops out and wood floats, so they can come back and save the wood. Now, this was supposed to be going to Japan, and I was going to set up the show, but they wouldn't. It's a weapon. Well, they thought it was a weapon. Well, it was originally a weapon, and they wouldn't allow it into the country. They were really strict about that stuff. So, being a nature faker, I made a mold of Joe's original. Now, this is just completely white. If you can see, that's what it looked like. I don't know if you can see that. But the whole thing was white. And then it was my job to paint it. So I painted it till it looks like bone, and it looks like it's oily and old. And this was actually spray painted silver, got some brown paint, dabbed it, and it looks like rust. Now, if you look at it from a distance, or you look at it from 5 inches away, you can't tell that this is not the original. And then they let the show part come in. Here's another model I made. I made a whole bunch of these, and there's a story behind this. I'm not going to go into the story. But if you look at some of my other projects or videos, you'll hear the story of this. But this was also white. This is a harpoon rest that the Inuits would strap onto their boat. And these are the holes where they put the leather strap. Now this is scrimshaw. So they would actually carve designs on it. So this is like a bowhead whale on the top, and it has I don't know if you can see that, the blowholes up there. And you can see it's a walrus tusk. Right there, that's the root. So they cut this thing in half, strapped it together, carved it out, and placed it on their boat or kayak to go hunting. So it was not just a functional thing, it was a piece of artwork. There's the funny story on that yeah, it's a good story. Of course, this is my daughter, and she was in a lot of magazines for the museum because they needed a small child, and she got to be a part of the museum in a lot of different ways. The only thing I totally regret about not doing something is I was responsible for doing a giant sculpture. I'm going to show you that. So this is the largest sculpture I ever did. This is actually 4 stories high. And there's a story on this, which I'm not going to go into. but the mountain or the rock face goes up another 2 stories. And we did this, I was kind of the designer, so I did several maquettes, small models, and I did a lot of illustrations. And then we used my artwork to make a giant one out in the parking lot and brought it in sections. And if you want to know more about that, you'll just have to look at the other videos, because I don't want to waste time. But I am a scientific illustrator also. So now this is scientific illustration, and this is a watercolor. So this has to deal with my life and heartbreak and trying to protect myself. So it's a pretty good watercolor. It's really a scientific illustration, but with a surrealistic point of view and part of my life. I'm gonna switch back over here. You know, there's some illustration I did for different things. That's kind of a illustration I did on the computer, which makes things so much easier. The museum was doing a bowling league, so they wanted me to come up with some kind of logo. I thought it was pretty good, calling him the king and having one of those 1960s, yeah, but trying to bowl with 2 fingers. There's some other stuff in here. This is another project. Like I said, I never knew where I was going, what I was doing. This was a scientific concept. They were trying to figure out to do a giant whale sculpture. And the architects were the first ones to come up with something. And they said, we didn't like it. Can you do something for us? You know, and we didn't like the way they made our whales. We couldn't even tell what they were. So this was kind of a concept I came up with, showing the evolution of whales. So this is like the first one, Mesonekid and Pakicetus. And this was just a rough sketch, you know, no definition in the people, but just giving the scale on this. And then this is another possible direction where they're all fleshed out going that direction. Anyway, so they kind of like that. Here is see some anatomically correct whales. Now, these are not the whales you see in galleries. I went into the archives. I got all kind of information on sizes and where things were located. So there's a lot of scientific research that no one will ever see or understand. So when I kind of had the sculptures, I brought in some whale mammalogists, and they were looking for the little teeny things that didn't look right to them. And sometimes I had to fight with them because I had the paperwork to back up what I was doing. So after many hours and days of discussion and sculpting, this was a side project to go to the Leo Cabrillo Aquarium in San Pedro. And I believe they're still on display. And the reason they contacted me, because I was part of the team making the whale show. And this is actually a life-size minke whale that I sculpted and put together. And, you know, it would have been easier if the mouth was closed, but of course, nothing's ever easy. So they said, oh, we want the mouth open. We want to show the tongue and the rostrum. That's the thing up in there in the front. And the baleen. So I have to carve this thing and, well, not carve it, sculpt it. So this is a scientific sculpture. Another one of those kind of crazy things. The museum was getting a Mars rock, and I did all the artwork in the background, and I was looking so forward to holding something from another planet. But I am part of the team to set up the shows that we created to go all over the country and the world, you know, all over. And I was going to Japan to set it up, and I missed the opportunity to hold something from a different planet. Did some crazy things. There's a lot of artwork in here of different line drawings of the museum that I did. And this one is my dog. Actually, this was Kayla. Cody's the one Siberian I have now. This is a long time ago when I had my other one. And I explained this to people before, but now scientists don't think in a creative way. And they wanted to show the carnassials. So they just wanted the bone jaw and just kind of have something pointing to the carnassials. And I thought it was way too boring. So I said, give me some time to think about it. And I thought about it, and I used my dog. And then using the computer, I decreased the opacity. And so it looks like you could see through her face and her jaw. And then highlighted the tooth. And then they were really happy with that. You know, I did a lot of stuff, scientific stuff here, illustrations. Here's kind of my scientific, because I work with Dr. Chiappi, and we worked back and forth, but we didn't have anything like this. We had bones and some femurs, and we had a skin impression, which gave me kind of more of an idea what the skin is. I had to go back and change the eye orbit because it was way too small, so we did that. And anyway, so this was out there, and it went into a lot of publications and websites and magazines, and it was all over the place. Again, never knew what I was going to be doing. This is actually for the cat show, and this is a 3-foot cat tongue I had to sculpt. And if you ever feel one of those cat's tongue, a small cat, it feels kind of rough. When you look under a microscope, they're actually hooks. So when you see a cat or a lion licking something, they're not licking it. They're actually scraping off the fur and feathers. And then here's another one, scientific illustration. Now, like, I've been trying to explain to some of the people in my videos, you know, sometimes things take a long time. And my watercolors do take a long time. Because I'm a scientific illustrator, but I still have freedom now because I can do whatever I want. Now, this is a new species of fly. It took me 2 weeks to do this. But the entomologists, we go back and forth, 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 and you see something I missed, but they're looking for every crack and crevice and thing on this little creature. Now, the reason it takes so long is because if we publish this paper and there's another entomologist that looks at this species and says, well, you missed something there. That little notch that I found is not in your representation of this specimen. It makes him look bad. So he counts every single hair, the thickness, the direction, and everything. So it is something that took me a long time, 2 weeks, so it's not the normal thing. But it made me a better artist. Now, I used to do everything in acrylics. I could do anything with acrylics because if I messed up, I just paint over it and keep on going. And I hated watercolors. That was my enemy. I tried a lot of stuff in the very beginning. It was like, okay, I can't use watercolors in the museum. It's a no-win situation. So something that caused me pain was also my challenge. So I decided, okay, I'm going to make this work. So over the 20 years of perfecting, or what I thought was perfecting my techniques, I believe I got pretty close to being happy with what I could do with watercolors. Now, watercolors is one of the most difficult mediums, I think, and a lot of people hate it for that same reason. But I also did a lot of different scientific illustrations and for a lot of different departments. Anyway, so it just part of the job, or the job of a museum artist, sculptor, model maker, scientific illustrator. And like I said on another previous, if you were to read this paper, it would give you a headache. Yes, and trying to work with the scientists so that they're happy and I'm happy is something you need to try to get used to. Anyway, so this is some of the scientific illustrations. These are more line drawings with, you know, crazy amount of detail. It's not the same detail as the ant decapitating fly I showed you earlier. And that fly is so tiny, I should go like this, because it's so tiny, it lays its eggs in the back of the neck. And once the eggs hatch, they eat what's there, and the head of the ant falls off. I forgot to mention that on that other one. But you can see there's some really pretty good detail, but it's not the, you know, the shading and the color and all the other stuff that was required for that other scientist, because everybody has their own needs. But the detail is, I'm kind of proud of some of these things, I'm sorry to say. I really like the way it turned out. I don't think I'm going to go through all of these, but just give you a little heads up. Anyways, I'm not going to go through all these, but just to give you an idea what the job of a scientific illustrator, sculptor, model maker, and designer, what their work looks like. So, sorry this is a little bit long. Thank you. Hello, I'm Steve Melendrez, a model maker, illustrator, scientific illustrator, sculptor, design Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. Done a lot of different things, but I'm going to be doing watercolor demonstrations of the techniques I've developed over the years. And it's going to go from a lot of different directions. And also I'm going to be doing videos, I call them video posters for my daughter. So a lot of stuff that I can leave to my daughter about her crazy dad. So I'm taking a lot of different directions, but mainly three. So anyway, that's my introduction that I'm going to attach to everything I'm doing now, so I don't have to repeat this. Be careful out there.